Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the T-Systems webinar, Using the Internet of Things to Manage the Corona Crisis. Please use the Q&A box on the bottom of your screen to ask questions, and we will address them after the presentation. Now we'll hand it over to T-Systems' Matt Oakes to get us started.
Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you, Aaron, for the introduction. Again, my name is Matt Oakes. Today, we're discussing, how we are managing this Corona crisis today as we're moving forward, and looking at how we manage those spaces, ensure that security of some of those isolated areas, and how we also manage the utilities and those devices and the facilities that are part of that infrastructure. So moving forward, we will start with managing spaces. So one of the things that we are currently dealing with, not only from a commercial perspective, but also business to business and ourselves interacting every day, is the challenge of being able to keep social distancing or a safe distance, with folks as we move forward during times of Corona. And one of those issues and some of the challenges I know that a lot of folks are facing is isolation's not always possible when continuity for critical services and businesses are at stake and that are needed and required. And some of those revolve around healthcare. And some of it even has to do with our day-to-day lives and us being able to go back to work. So one of those is when we look at those challenges and keeping safe and looking at space occupancy and understanding where we need to keep those distances, we need to have pieces in place that will allow us to do that. And it's very hard to keep people at necessary distances. And one of the ways that we're doing those kind of things is being able to use a connected device similar to like a traffic light to be able to reduce not only risk of infection, but just overall distancing as an overall way of managing this moving forward. And part of that is also tracking the number of people that are also in those locations. So digital access control is extremely important. And being able to visualize and have regulations of each room occupancy shouldn't be complex. It should be very easy. It needs to be easily understood not only by us as the folks implementing it, but also for the folks that are going to be using it on a day-to-day basis. Part of that is the building monitoring and analytics that we have nowadays. It has become very sophisticated. And we see this, we see these things every day, even with us badging in and out of our buildings that we go into, either manufacturing facilities or maybe you work at a Dell or a CDW and you badge into those locations. We have the ability to be able to use these monitoring systems and be able to use these maybe even as traffic control or some type of device that will allow us entrance and making it so that it's easily understood and being able to work. This solution here, as you can see here on the screen, is showing us, okay, we have a specific distance that we're keeping, and we're controlling that through a device on the wall that will allow for not only a stop and go consistency, but also a distancing consistency. A lot of these can be done, can be triggered by other devices as well. We can have hubs, we can have cell phones, things that will be able to relay messages back and forth. Imagine being able to sit in your car, similar to what we do for urgent care sometimes here in Texas. And we'll be able to get a monitoring solution that is SMS that will message us to come into a building, but then allow us to keep the social distancing aspect of that. We'll see more about those solutions toward the end, but allowing us to keep that distance and manage that control and that occupancy within those spaces. One of those is being able to visualize this as well. Imagine being able to see this, have a real dashboard showing real-time usage, and being able to move forward with controlling the areas at which you need to have critical mass kept at a very specific number. And some of those things revolve around using a platform, using a software as a service connected to these systems to be able to not only do the analytics, but to be able to visualize it, see the dashboard, be able to go through that dashboard and to be able to intelligently look at it and do insights from that. There are a number of solutions that allow that. For us at T Systems, we're able to take these devices and be able to pull that into our Cloud of Things platform and be able to manage that from a single pane of glass. Similarly, we do what they call it's kind of like a sensor stitching. We have multiple devices that we can connect together to make somewhat of a net, and that net can be able to take all those lines of communications and that data and bring that in and bring that into a platform that allows us to intelligently look at it, identify whether it be crowded areas inside of a classroom, common areas like a stadium, very similar to a cafe going into use a cafeteria, or even that of a Costco, being able to enter and be able to show occupancy, so we know how many people are going in and out of the facility and how many are there, so that we keep that social distancing aspect, but also being able to control critical areas in that aspect as well. One of the other functions is built into these is the alarms, and the alerting, sensing, the ability that comes into play with some of these solutions, and it's key for these critical areas. And a lot of the use cases that we've seen of late, whether it be inside of a data center or warehouses, and as you can see here, we see a doctor and a nurse here that are discussing certain aspects, and there's a sensor on the wall that's allowing us to do to do this and control certain critical areas where certain people may not need to be. Medical containers can have these kind of devices, but also rooms that also have critical machinery in them, whether it be a manufacturing facility, maybe a lab. Those enter and exit scenarios are very, very important in knowing who is there and knowing how long maybe they've been in those rooms are extremely important. And some of those alarm features can be sent through SMS. Some of those alarm features can be sent back to a main dashboard. They're being seen by somewhat at a human interface device, and have certain levels of control. One of the things we also need to realize that kind of through this process is that certain resources shouldn't be added to maybe be able to check on other resources. So automating a lot of these processes is very important. And having a platform or a software as a service platform that will allow, for these to be seen and to be visualized is extremely, extremely important. One of the solutions that I want to at least kind of bridge off of from a couple weeks ago, we've done a couple webinars here at T Systems relative to the Corona crisis. And a couple weeks ago, we had a very interesting webinar done by Alex, who heads up our IoT business here in the United States, talking about the thermal body imaging and thermal solutions that we have available and that are available through some of our vendors. And these are critical in terms of being able to really look at and identify individuals that may or may not be required to go into certain areas when it's due to temperature, or at least from this perspective, trying to look at large groups of folks coming in and out of facilities and being able to look at a temperature that is now being associated in terms of possible symptoms relative to Corona. And as you can see here, we've got 4 different use cases in certain areas, but it's not only for these as well. These kind of solutions can be implemented in a manufacturing facility, in labs, large common areas, so that we can look and see who's coming in and out of these facilities and be able to isolate them quickly if needed. These solutions, as we talked about before, very, very simple to set up, canned, bundled solutions that start with something similar to like a camera, and then the network, and then the monitoring piece that would be bolted into a network or a hub, making it easy to stand up, and kind of an out-of-box functionality. And we have the ability to customize these too, and a lot of other manufacturers that we do work with, we have great relationships with, and it's the resources that you can use with us, here at T Systems, to try to leverage this technology moving forward to try to help maintain that space occupancy. At a very holistic way of looking at this, I wanted to kind of show the process of what that digital access control can look like at a very high level from a management perspective, and how in how we can help reduce the risk, not only for the visitors, but for our employees that are coming in, and help them better understand that. Some of these pieces are, we talked about the logic of being able to keep the difficulty in distancing, but also overflow in some of these critical areas. And what we do is we put a sensor in place. We're using cloud connectivity. It could be power over Ethernet. There's a number of ways to connect, but ultimately we're pulling that data into an IoT platform, and then we're doing some type of logic on that data, collecting it so that we can do actionable insights. And here, for example, we have the traffic light logic where we're showing people coming in and out. We know how many people are going into these buildings. We have the ability to manage this. For example, for like a store manager, we have an SMS message that can be sent out, allow for large groups of people to understand, the situation, or maybe just in general to say, hey, this room is fully occupied and we're unable to bring any more people in. And then at the same time, being able to analyze, let's look at how many people are coming in during certain times. Is it extremely crowded at 10 a.m.? We can start to do this type of an analysis to know that maybe we need to change and direct traffic in certain areas within a building, within a manufacturing facility, that allows us to not only keep the distancing, but to control the areas that we need to control to be more secure. These kind of systems, this kind of digital access control bridges into how we look at building management, how we will look at those facilities, and how we will manage those moving forward inside of this time, not only with Corona in the forefront of the pandemic now, but also moving forward as we look 18 months to 2 years ahead. How will we look at, how will we be addressing, what the Corona effects have been, now on us here in 2020. So transitioning, I want to talk more now about managing the building and the aspects. And we looked at the people flow. We understand that, here there's a fire drill that was being done overseas in the Netherlands, and how that kind of control is very difficult to maintain. And the solutions that we showed earlier can help mitigate that, can have better control over it. Now we're shifting to look at the monitoring of the power and the critical resources that are used every day. How we do that, how will we look at it from being able to limitly get access to some of these buildings now? How will we look at these and manage them moving forward? And not only that, but also being able to look at keeping our facilities running at full time, and also being able to manage these things on a very predictive way. How we can do certain things that aren't detectable on a regular basis. How do we do this where people aren't in these certain areas for long periods of time, and how do we can be able to manage that moving forward? Very similar to what we've seen in data centers and manufacturing facilities. We're also going to have to start transitioning and looking at some of these larger areas too, that will encompass stadiums and large meeting venues for music and things of that nature. So one of the things I want to talk about here, and you can kind of see a solution here on the right that kind of helps show what it is that we're doing here, is that when you're looking at light monitoring, and I'm using the marquee here as an example, but when you look at the system that's being used to turn lights on and off in a large scale, let's think about the Las Vegas and the way that the lights are consumed inside of a hotel and casino, and be able to monitor and establish some type of consumption rate and look at what this illumination would look like, not only in those kind of places, but in manufacturing facilities. When we've got large groups of people that are not coming in and out of the facility, we need to be able to manage this not only remotely, but also be able to do it so that we can understand, how we can control certain aspects of the lighting from a consumable aspect. And one of the largest energy consumption metrics that a lot of places look at is the efficiency around light and electrical usage. And in this scenario here, we have gateways as well as current meters that would be accessing certain areas for illumination, and then that system will be tracking that into a platform that allows us to do actionable insights, like we talked about with the people flow, something very similar. And another thing to understand is that this system here can be butted up against inside of that platform as well. So you're not only seeing the people capacity and the flow from a management perspective around people flow, but you're also looking at this same pane of glass when it comes to the utilities piece, finding out that when you have higher densities of folks inside of a casino, maybe the lighting and things of that nature have disruptions. We can start to see different aspects that we don't see on a normal basis, and be able to do the maintenance that's needed to be able to maintain that, but also doing it in a fashion of keeping the distancing requirements and the interaction requirements between us right now during Corona to a minimum. Another piece of that is also looking at the heating and ventilation and just the air. That could be the quality of air. It could be something as simple as a smoke CO device that would be installed in your home, that would be connected into your home monitoring system, all the way to a scenario here that we talk about when we look at heating and ventilation in a very large warehouse like Walmart Superstore or inside of a Costco. The air handling devices and these human interface devices that are inside of these ventilation systems can be very sophisticated, but they normally require some type of interaction with these devices on a regular basis. That is you interacting with the device directly and not looking at that from a remote perspective. And one of the concerns that we have is that we need to be able to do this from a remote basis and be able to manage these in a much better fashion, so that we're be able to do this from great distances and not actually having to be on location doing certain types of truck rolls and doing that predictive maintenance, so that we know that once we've gathered this data over a certain period of time, we may be able to predict when that device may go down. And it allows us to be able to roll a truck out and to be able to do the maintenance on these devices in a much more predictable manner, and doing it in a planned downtime. So that not only either stopping production in a facility or not allowed for folks to be able to come into your Home Depot or your Costco, this allows us to do that, to be able to see that part may be able to be breaking inside of the HVAC system. Replace that in a timely fashion, be up and running, and know that we can do that while the store is closed, and know that we did it before operation started the next day. Another piece of this, and this also bridges into managing the consumption of maybe medical devices inside of a hospital, but we monitoring the current and the consumption of certain devices. But not only that, in this case here, we're looking at emergency plant utilization and how we would measure that in those meters that are used to measure that current. We may find out that we've got very high spikes and unpredictable certain things happening during Corona. And so some of the ways that we can do that is it will allow for us to have a much better insight as time would move on how we may have brownouts, how we may have certain scenarios where we've got very large isolated sections of cities or states that are consuming high amounts of electricity or power during a certain consumption period because of something that's related to Corona. We look at this from a hospital perspective. We have a number of folks going in, their utilization of those buildings is changing, and being able to do that and do the predictive maintenance and monitor how those devices is extremely important. And if we've got more devices inside of a hospital running on a more regular basis, we need to help them understand that and be able to help look at those solutions moving forward to help them, better predict how it is that they'll be able to do business during Corona. I want to look at our approach quick as we finish up our talk here on the Corona crisis and how we are monitoring spaces, and also that utilization of the energies and those devices that are using that energy capacity. Is that our approach is very holistic. We look at these areas to help understand your business, and innovation is in the center of that. We know that you're here to innovate and to change the dynamic of your business, whether that be to redesign maybe a process internally, or maybe it's a device. Maybe it is that you're trying to make a 2.0 version of a device that you have, and being able to use that inside of Corona. And we want to help that. We've got a very large ecosystem. The technology experts that we have here are phenomenal. And we help in terms of not only that trusted advisor, but we're here to help you with the solution, but to help you have a journey. That customer journey has a number of aspects in it, and that goes from, you know, looking at the cost benefit analysis, making sure that this is right for your business. If it's not right, we want to make sure that we're helping you make those correct decisions. And on part of that is also that design and that capability of either building something custom or finding one of our off-the-shelf bundles. And to talk a little bit about those bundles, right now we're offering 60-day trials on some of those bundles for free, so that you can understand better how you can help manage the Corona crisis, you know, for your business. Once we've done this kind of evaluation on how we would build these, we look at the POC and how we can effectively move through that POC, hit those guidelines, and then roll out. But we don't just stop there. We have a continued cycle of us helping not only finish the device from a production or your process into your production or deployment, but also to continue to help you as a key solution provider for your business on those cycles that move forward, so that we are part of, we want to help you during your journey. Again, I want to thank everybody for their time today. Again, we went over managing our spaces and utilizing the consumption of energy and utilities inside of not only the buildings, but also inside of, you know, other areas that we need to be especially key on during this Corona crisis. Again, thank you for your time. We'll have a brief Q&A session after this as well. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Just a reminder, on the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box that you can ask questions. We will send out this recording along with a link to the slides following the presentation. One question we do have, can the data gathered by these solutions be used in other applications or only on the portal provided?
It can definitely be used in other applications. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, and we do have an engineer that is on, I believe, with us, Juan, that could maybe elaborate a little bit more on this. But in general, depending on the access and how it would work, you know, RESTful APIs will allow for data to be brought in from multiple devices to be brought into the platform. Even if you do have a device that it has a platform that's inherent to it, those data streams can still be pulled into some type of IoT platform to be visualized. So it's not isolated in that fashion. And the streams of data can all be analyzed together as well. So you could have multiple devices and running those together. Hopefully that answered your question. Juan, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
we can.
Perfect. Yeah, just to elaborate, this portal and application supports standard APIs, so you can get the data and use it in any other platform as needed. These are the standard REST interface APIs, which are very common in the market, and it's fully supportable.
Another question. Interesting to see that you're using, and I might mispronounce this,
LoRaWAN.
Okay. Well, wireless network connectivity. Can you explain what made you decide to use this instead of other wireless technologies?
Sure, and I'll handle this one, and I'll let Juan kind of elaborate. The solution that we showed here just happens to be LoRaWAN that we were showing. Nothing specific to LoRaWAN. We have a number of different technologies that we are able to use and connect into into a platform. And I'll speak to this in terms of our platform, but also in terms of other platforms as well. We have the ability to pull in, data streams from multiple different sources using an array of technologies, whether it be LoRaWAN, narrowband, whatever that may be. The presentation I just showed happened to have some solutions where we were using LoRaWAN. And but if you've got additional questions around that connectivity, we can definitely show some other pieces to you as well.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to Matt if you have any further questions. And again, you'll be receiving an email with a recording of this and a link to the slides. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.